The Turkish Grand Prix in the heat of Istanbul, the resumption of a fascinating Formula One World Championship season after its 3-week summer break. McLaren left the last round in Hungary as both winners and losers. Lewis Hamilton took victory in the race, but his relationship with teammate Fernando Alonso rather boiled over. The team seemed to be tearing itself apart and needed to sort things out before this next vital race here in Turkey.
So it's time to get away. It's time to get away.
Is he blocking Hamilton here?
Time to get away.
Extraordinary.
Time to get away.
There's going to be some serious fireworks now.
And next time we'll talk it over.
Lewis Hamilton takes his 3rd victory in Formula One.
And we can start again.
Well, the evidence of this Turkish Grand Prix weekend so far is certainly that a kind of compromise has been reached, unity has been restored, and the team is very ready for these last 6 races that will decide the World Championship titles. Lewis Hamilton emphasised his composure and his determination by taking a front row spot alongside Ferrari's Felipe Massa, who's on pole position. Race highlights will be described by Martin Brundle and James Allen after we've reminded you of this Istanbul Park circuit where so much great racing is possible.
It's the 3rd Turkish Grand Prix at this magnificent racetrack. It's run anti-clockwise, just like Imola and Interlagos, with 6 right-hand corners and 8 left. The infamous turn 8, which is long and bumpy, challenges both the drivers and the cars. It'll be hot and dusty. In the GP2 race last year, Lewis Hamilton was simply sensational. He spun early on and then drove back through the field, marking himself out as a future star. He ended up on the Formula One radar, and with that kind of form, there's no surprise, despite being a rookie, that he's leading this year's World Championship.
And so the grid for the Turkish Grand Prix, there is nothing to choose in performance between the top 4. Massa's victory conversion rate from pole isn't great, just over 50%. That's good news for Hamilton alongside him. Raikkonen starts from the clean side of the track. That could prove crucial. Alonso starts 4th. Kubica and Heidfeld make up row 3. At one point, they set identical times before the pole got the upper hand. Kovalainen and Nico Rosberg make up row 8. Rosberg again solidly booking a place in the top 10. Trulli has out-qualified his teammate Ralf Schumacher 10 times this season. Giancarlo Fisichella is alongside. Row 12, Davidson and Webber. Davidson missing out on a top 10 quali slot by 4/100ths of a second. David Coulthard's 13th with Alex Wirtz, the 2 veterans, on row 7. Row 8, Tonio Liuzzi in the Toro Rosso. He's out of a job for next year at the moment. Ralf Schumacher is 16th. 17th is Sato with Sebastian Vettel. He's already booked his place at Toro Rosso for 2008. But once the spikers are not at the back of the grid, Sutil and Yamamoto can look back and see the 2 Hondas of Button and Barrichello. They had to drop because of an engine change. Ferrari then fighting to stay in this title race, and they can afford no more slip-ups. They really need to have both cars in front of both McLarens at every race for the remainder of this championship if they're to have any hope. Raikkonen 20 points behind Hamilton, Massa 21 points behind him. There is no more exciting or better moment in sport than the build-up to the start of a Grand Prix. Hamilton on the right, Massa on the left. The 3rd Turkish Grand Prix is go! Great start by Hamilton. He comes across one of the BMWs. Kubica it is, has been very active off the line, but Raikkonen has got the jump. That is critical. And we've got a spinner in the midfield. I think it's Jarno Trulli in the Toyota, which has caused Sato to go off track. And look at the McLaren. You can see of Alonso side by side with Heidfeld, I believe it is. So Kubica has made the move, and Alonso has to yield. So that's 2 BMWs in front of Alonso. But critically, Martin, 2 Ferraris out front. And once again, that dirty side of the racetrack did for Hamilton.
It did, and also, of course, they were on the soft tyre, and he, probably slightly surprisingly, was on the hard. He obviously thinks that's the better tyre for the first phase of the Grand Prix, but it cost him those 3 or 4 metres. And also, as you say, the cleaner side of the track for Raikkonen got him through. But what happened to Alonso? He had a terrible start.
Massa leads, Raikkonen is 2nd. 3rd is Hamilton, 4th Kubica, 5th Heidfeld, 6th Fernando Alonso, the reigning world champion, 7th Kovalainen, 8th Rosberg, 9th Coulthard, 10th Mark Webber, 11th is Wirtz, 12th Liuzzi, good start for him. Fisichella's had a bad start. He's down to 13th in the Renault. Ralf Schumacher up to 14th in the Toyota. Davidson has lost 4 places in the Super Aguri on the opening lap, down to 15th spot. You can see the 2 BMWs there battling with Alonso. In many ways, Martin, Hamilton has got to worry about the Ferraris, yes, but he's so far ahead of them in the championship. His main concern, his biggest job today, is to keep Alonso behind him, and having 2 BMWs between himself and his main rival is not a bad scenario.
I don't think Lewis will be totally dissatisfied with that. He knew, from what he was saying on the grid, he knew he was under pressure from the Ferraris. He's kept ahead of Alonso, as you say. I think he'll be fully satisfied. All 4 wheels pointing in the same direction. Good strategy. He'll probably like those tyres, and there's an awful long way to go yet. So Jarno Trulli currently running last but 1 in the Toyota. He was the spinner in the first corner, and others making ground with that. Coulthard up to P9 and Barrichello up to P16 from the back row of the grid, so they managed to pick their way through the carnage. But at the moment, all 22 cars on the racetrack.
See the Honda there of Jenson Button attacking Sakon Yamamoto's Spiker. This is the battle for 19th place for the 2nd race in a row. Button finding himself right at the back of the field and having to duke it out with cars he probably didn't even recognise before the start of this season, let alone have any experience of racing against. Yamamoto, who has been promoted halfway through this season from GP2 up to a race seat at Spiker, then holding Jenson Button behind him. Out the front, though, the race leader, Felipe Massa, is trying to break away from Kimi Raikkonen, and he will be struggling to do that because Raikkonen's been on good form recently. Made a mistake in qualifying yesterday, but generally speaking, the second half of the season has been much better for Raikkonen than the first half. There is Alonso, tucked up behind Heidfeld. And Martin, we've seen him struggle with Heidfeld a few times this year. Think back to Bahrain, there have been other occasions in which Heidfeld has got in front of Alonso and stayed there.
Yeah, Alonso's had his whole Grand Prix wrecked by following cars for 20-25 laps. You have to say, in those circumstances, Hamilton appears to have the precision and determination to nail these people, even if he takes a few more risks. But Alonso, really, that is a disaster for him back in 6th place, falling away from the BMWs. We think those BMWs are a little bit lighter on fuel. That's why they're hanging on to Lewis Hamilton as well. And Hamilton has stabilised the gap a little bit. Finally, he's got the Ferraris matched for pace, because at the moment they built up a 1.1 second lead over him. This is Alonso down into turn 1, and oh, so close to spinning that. Well held.
Well, he will have some concern about how much fuel Nick Heidfeld is carrying in the 5th place car in front of him, because the suggestion was he may even have 3 or 4 laps more fuel than his teammate Robert Kubica, in which case he'd probably go further into this race than Alonso. So we'll watch that situation with great interest. At the front, though, Massa, we were talking, you and I, this morning, Martin, about his conversion rate of pole positions to victory. 4 wins from 7 poles, just over 50%. Not bad. I'm sure a lot of drivers would like to have the same rate, but it's not a cast iron certainty for him, is it?
No, he was absolutely brilliant in this race last year. Really humbled Michael Schumacher, if you remember. And Hamilton immediately going defensive to the Ferraris, just passed him already, long gone. He had a sensible pill and didn't try to get back up the inside of Raikkonen. As you see, the Toyota spinning right in the middle of the pack, and some brilliant driving from many of the others to avoid any further contact. Look at that, no contest down to turn 1 in terms of launch and grip. And here we go, we're on board with Trulli, and he just got in a bit deep. Suspect he had a little push up the back as well to help him into that spin. Almost certainly he had a punch up the back by the Renault then of Giancarlo Fisichella that spun him around. Not his fault.
Yeah, you could see it from on board with Trulli. He got a nudge and round he went. There's been a lot of that going on this weekend. GP2 race as well. And here we go at the front then. Massa, Raikkonen, Hamilton. Hamilton did exactly the right thing at the start once he realised he'd lost the place to Raikkonen. Put his car right in the middle of the track so that Kubica, who'd had an electric start from the 3rd row of the grid, could not get past him. And once again, that very uncompromising attitude of Lewis Hamilton off the start line. He's all elbows, isn't he? Very difficult to get past, and tremendous recovery rate. So there is Kubica, Heidfeld, Alonso, frustrated, back in 6th place. Kovalainen is 7th, and Rosberg rounding out the top 8. Lap 6 of the Turkish Grand Prix from Istanbul, the beginning of a very intense push towards the end of this World Championship. We've got 6 races in 8 weekends. This is the first of them. 2 lots of back-to-backs coming up as well, and it really is very intense on the racetrack. Massa and Raikkonen, the 2 Ferraris, got the jump at the start. Raikkonen got in front of Hamilton. That was crucial for him, and he is a second behind his teammate at the front. Hamilton is being dropped at the moment. At last lap, he was 0.6 of a second slower than Kimi Raikkonen, and he is now 2 seconds behind the Finn in third. Kubica and Heidfeld both got in front of Fernando Alonso, the reigning world champion, off the start line in the BMWs. They are 4th and 5th. Alonso down in 6th then, almost 8 seconds behind the race leader now. Heikki Kovalainen in the Renault is 7th, with Nico Rosberg scrapping with him all the way in the Williams in 8th.
Is that a Red Bull going slowly? It's a Red Bull struggling, that's for sure. Wirtz, yeah, something not at all tight on that car of Mark Webber, and Wirtz has made his way past. Webber goes to turn in and has to turn back out of the corner again to keep it pointing in the right direction. Almost looks like a loose wheel or a failed suspension part.
Well, that was Wirtz up to 10th then, replacing Webber. Now Fisichella has gone past Webber as well, so this has been a very slow lap for Mark Webber, who clearly has some problems. There he goes into the pit lane, the Red Bull driver. Probably the unluckiest driver in modern Formula 1, you'd have to say.
Yeah, he's had a right rear puncture now. The tyre is up, so let's wait and see what they can find. This, the structural integrity of the suspension is so strong these days that, you know, you don't just throw a new part on. They're so comprehensively built, it's difficult to replace even small and easily accessible suspension parts.
There's the lead then, and you get the sense that Massa with Raikkonen in his shadow as we look at Webber retiring from this Grand Prix. Ted Kravitz is down there. What can you tell us?
Mark Webber, just quickly on Mark Webber, they've had to bring him into the garage, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get him going. But just one telltale sign, as he came down the pit lane, the hydraulically operated fuel flap wasn't working. And previously in other races I've noticed that, and it's been a hydraulic failure. So we'll wait to hear from him, but that's what it looks like for now for Webber.
Oh, he's gone wide. Did the McLaren get up the inside? No, he didn't.
Giving him a chance, though. He's lost some momentum. If Alonso can get a good drive out of this corner, he's a bit rough over the curve. Let's see if he can get himself tucked up behind Heidfeld into turn 1 for a pass. He's going to have to be very aggressive to make it stick. Thinks about it, but then thinks again. Shows you just how big a mistake a driver has to make for the guy behind to capitalise on it.
New fastest lap in the race by Kimi Raikkonen, who's now just 0.8 away from Massa, 2.9 ahead of Alonso, of Hamilton. We're on board with Alonso, who is doing a bit of rallycross there. His left front tyre will not appreciate that too much.
And BMW getting ready for a pit stop. This is only lap 12. That's far too early, surely, to be scheduled. It may be some kind of problem that Heidfeld has radioed in about that caused him to have that difficulty in the complex. If he's about to pit, that's probably the best news Fernando Alonso's had all day. On board with Trulli, what's going on here? Button in front of us, and we go scything past him. They're having a great battle, those two. But does Button get him past? Yes, he does. It's Barrichello, actually. Barrichello goes through, 15th place.
Yeah, so Barrichello's got ahead of the pair of them again, and Trulli gets past, gets it completely sideways, and Button retakes the position. It's Kubica that pits. He was the light BMW, as we expected.
That means Fernando Alonso has only got one BMW in front of him now, between himself and teammate Lewis Hamilton, who's running in 3rd place. Well, it's a 58-lap race, this one. I mentioned earlier on the choice of when you use the soft tyre and when you use the hard tyre could prove critical. And one little pointer possibly for us is that Robert Kubica, the first car to pit there, who had been running the softer tyres in the opening stint, has switched onto the hards now for a long middle stint. So he obviously feels that the harder tyre is more consistent and more durable on the day. And that's quite interesting. And if that's the case, then obviously Ferrari will get their stint on the softer tyre possibly out of the way at this stage. It's very interesting to see what they choose to do at the first round of pit stops. If they jump onto the hards, then they're looking pretty good.
Alonso is begging Heidfeld to go in the pit lane between turns 13 and 14 every single lap. He needs to get back on it now in some clear air. He's 14.7 seconds away from the leader.
Rubens Jensen is 2 seconds quicker, or claims to be 2 seconds quicker.
Well, Rubens doesn't agree with that. You have to say some of the sector times do, but this is Button showing it for himself and taking the place anyway. Those radio transmissions are partly delayed through the system, and to check there's no expletives in them. So that was it's kind of old news to an extent, and Button then is already ahead of Barrichello.
In comes Heidfeld, and he is the second of the BMWs to make his first stop here this afternoon. On the harder tyre at the moment. Let's see what he goes to.
Now Alonso's got to nail it, while Heidfeld cruises down the pit lane at just 50 miles an hour. Still looks quite fast if you stand in front of a car coming at you at 50 miles an hour. Helmet cam there showing that the left front is easily ready to go. Quite a lot of fuel going in that car. Plenty of people pitting. Rosberg and Coulthard too from 7th and 8th places.
Back out goes Heidfeld. And who is
ahead of
just in front of
Kubica.
Kubica. That's interesting. So that's a change. Kubica was in front before, but by staying out a bit longer, that's given Heidfeld the chance to leapfrog his teammates. So Heidfeld will be in front of him now, and I think certainly Kimi Raikkonen will have paid attention to that, and be hoping if he's got more fuel than Massa, that he'll be able to do the same thing. Ferrari getting ready then. We believe it might be for Kimi Raikkonen. So maybe Massa was the one with the most fuel, if that's the case. Let's wait and see.
Well, it makes sense because Raikkonen made that error, didn't he, in that very corner he's just come through yesterday. He probably should have been on pole position. McLaren getting ready, I suspect, for Hamilton. We'll wait and see. So Raikkonen pits, and we think actually it's Alonso pitting first. He went out on the harder tyres, thought he'd play an ace card yesterday and failed miserably with that, with the harder tyres. Alonso P4 on the grid. Massa then a new fastest lap of the race while Raikkonen is in for service. Alonso indeed pits for McLaren.
That's how far behind Kimi Raikkonen he was. Raikkonen's already had service and gone back out again before Alonso comes to a stop. Another set of the harder tyres going on to the McLaren. Raikkonen stayed with the softer Bridgestone, so two completely different attitudes to this race and how to run it between McLaren and Ferrari at the moment. Where is Alonso going to feed back out? One of the Renaults has just gone through with Fisichella in 7th place. And Heidfeld, of course, is the man that Alonso is racing against. Here he is, and there is Alonso, I believe. So if that's the case, Alonso has leapfrogged him.
Yeah, must have been a great in-lap from Alonso, and it has made the difference. Heidfeld putting a lot of fuel in the car, we know. And is that doesn't look like a McLaren in front, does it? Or is it?
Pretty sure it has to be. On board then with Heidfeld being shown as in 7th place then in the BMW. Remember, Robert Kubica, his teammate, is behind him. So quite a lot of change to the order here through the first round of pit stops. We've had one retirement so far. It's Mark Webber as the race leader. Felipe Massa comes in for his first pit stop, and this is going to be a pretty important one. Remember, he did a lap longer than Raikkonen, so he should be able to rejoin in front. But any mistakes or slip-ups here will hand the lead to Raikkonen. Looks pretty smooth to me at the moment. Reasonable amount of fuel going in for Massa. Slightly slow away from his pit box. Where is his teammate?
It's a long way down that pit lane at 50 miles an hour.
There
we know that Raikkonen had an awesome in-lap, but surely Massa is going to comfortably maintain the lead. There's a Renault there that must be Kovalainen, presumably. Yes, it is Kovalainen, who's yet to pit. Did Kovalainen get ahead of Massa? Oh, yes, he did indeed. And that is for position, because Kovalainen hasn't pitted yet. He's not really racing for this victory, but he's perfectly entitled to defend his position there, because Kovalainen runs second. Hamilton leads this Grand Prix.
Louise has found Mark Webber, who's retired from this race.
Mark, Ted was speculating that perhaps it was a hydraulics problem, was he right?
Yeah, it looks like it's hydraulics, so yeah, it's always a shame to retire from a race. We're going quite long, longer than the people in front of us, and including Dave and a few other people, and sitting in there ready to go for the rest of the race, and yeah.
You've had hydraulics problems before. Is it the same area of the system every time?
Well, on the previous lap, I started to have problems with entry problems, you know, so yeah, downshifting, and then so I don't know if it's exactly the same problem, but for me in the cockpit it is the same problem. So
thanks, Mark.
Race leader Lewis Hamilton comes in. He'll hand the lead back to the Ferraris, of course. He was 3 seconds behind them before the first round of pit stops, but he will have made up some time, I think, by staying out. His in-lap was extremely fast, particularly the middle sector of it. Another set of hard Bridgestone tyres goes on. The fuel goes in, quite a lot of fuel for Hamilton. He won't get back out in front of the Ferraris. There they are, coming down the straight. Will he get one of them, perhaps? No, it doesn't look like he will get either of them, but he's running quite a long middle stint here, Lewis Hamilton, and on these harder tyres, so still all to play for if he can stay in touch with them through this middle part of the race.
Yeah, he's closer to them. He put in some great laps just before he came in, but he was 4.1 seconds adrift. Heikki Kovalainen leads the Grand Prix for Renault. Second, third and fourth are right behind him. Definitely Hamilton was a net gainer there.
In comes the third different race leader of the Turkish Grand Prix here. 37 laps still to go. Heikki Kovalainen, great improvement in him since that opening Grand Prix in Australia.
Yeah, he's finding his feet now, the kind of performances we were expecting from him. Let's see where he feeds out. 2 or 3 cars coming down the pit straight that could spoil his afternoon. And that is Alonso, who did indeed, of course, clear Heidfeld, and then Kubica as well. And Kovalainen clears Kubica. That'll be tight through turn 2. It's very wide through there. You can get 2 cars abreast, but no need. Kovalainen has got the job done. He now splits the BMW.
Button up the inside of David Coulthard. That's a battle for 12th and 13th places, and Button making that pass stick. So Jenson Button starting to make some progress here. Adrian Sutil looks headed for another retirement though. Certainly racing for the victory here this afternoon, Lewis Hamilton. Meanwhile, teammate Alonso, critically having lost 2 places off the start line to the BMWs, has managed to get them back again through race strategy. He is now behind Hamilton, albeit 14 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. So it's very interesting to see what he can do in the remaining 35 laps of this Grand Prix. That's the margin between the 2 McLarens, all to play for here in Istanbul. Lap 26, approaching half distance in the Turkish Grand Prix at Istanbul. The first of 3 races where the cars will not return back to their factories, particularly the ones in the UK. So a bit of a logistical headache really for all the teams to fly parts out to Monza and Spa over the coming weeks. A very intense period of the Formula One Championship, and a very intense race we've got here on this burning hot track. 49 degrees the track temperature, 35 the air temperature, and it's hot in the cockpits too. Massa, Raikkonen and Hamilton are at the front. Hamilton is on a different kind of strategy. He's running longer in the middle stint than the 2 Ferraris. At the moment, despite the extra fuel load, he seems able to live with them. Kovalainen team radio.
Come on, mate, we need you to push. We can beat Heidfeld as well, come on.
On the nose, the swoopy, distinctive nose of the McLaren. Lewis Hamilton at speed. He's had some good and bad days this season, Felipe Massa. Some races from pole, like Malaysia, which didn't work out for him. Other races where he was absolutely wonderful and really dominated the proceedings, like he did in Brazil last year. He can be very, very strong.
Good lap.
At the moment, he's been very quick. He's good lap that last time by Raikkonen, taking 3/10 out of him. But Massa trying very, very hard to get away from him.
21 cars still running. Sutil back in the race. Only Mark Webber not out on track. Again, supreme reliability from these cars. And indeed drivers, of course, for keeping it roughly, generally pointing in the right direction. It's lap 33. Raikkonen has closed the gap to 2.3 seconds.
Some driver changes and announcements being made in the run-up to this weekend and this weekend. Of course, Sebastian Bourdais, French driver currently dominating things over in America, is going to be coming to Formula One finally after knocking on the door for many, many years. Gerhard Berger of Toro Rosso has given him a seat for next year, as we look at Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota making his pit stop. His future still uncertain, whether he's going to stay at Toyota or try and move somewhere else. He was a candidate for possibly moving to Toro Rosso. Berger said the door is still open in the future, but at the moment the priority is to work with Bourdais and young Sebastian Vettel and see where we go. Interesting to see then what Toyota decide to do about Ralf Schumacher, who's been fairly erratic in form during the course of this season. Other confirmation coming through. BMW, Robert Kubica and Nick Heidfeld will both drive for the team again next year. No great surprises there. They've both done an excellent job. As Jenson Button pits for the second time this afternoon in the Honda from 12th place. Button started at the back of the grid, having had to change an engine after qualifying yesterday. And Ted Kravitz has some news for us on Jenson.
Well, yeah, it's a strange strategy by Honda. They fueled him to the end of the race, put the soft tyres on. They think they can get some decent performance out of it down here at Honda, but really they're racing the Super Aguris, and that might give them some kind of track position over them eventually when the Super Aguris pit, but it's certainly not going to get Jenson any points. But he's doing some good lap times anyway, Jenson.
The gap at the front is just 0.9 of a second as we trundle down the pit lane with Kubica in the BMW. Again on that front left head cam. Sweet, isn't it? He certainly got that front wheel on there easy enough. And the fuel usually tends to dominate the pit stop in terms of the length of it. But look, here are the Ferraris, and somehow or other, Raikkonen took 7/10 out of Massa on the previous lap. Was it that traffic that they're now ahead? Could well have been the Toyota there that's closed them up. Raikkonen suddenly smells the chance, and Massa's gone in too deep. He'll get away with it because there's nowhere to go in these final little switchbacks of 12, 13 and 14. But Massa didn't connect with the curve. They're suddenly slightly ragged as Raikkonen homes in on him.
The two Ferraris racing each other, not just for victory, but for the chance to be the one to go for the world title. As Martin said, sooner or later, Ferrari are going to have to decide which one to back. They cannot allow them to race each other and potentially take each other off if they want to win the World Championship. But Luca Di Montezemolo, the president of Ferrari, as Raikkonen gets a little bit caught there by the spiker, he said after Hungary, we now have to win every race, finish 1 and 2 in order to win this championship. That's the target I've set my people, and that is what the Ferrari guys know they have to do. They're certainly doing the job at the moment. 1 and 2 they are, with Hamilton third, but Raikkonen is looking racy.
So this will be the left front lock-up then into turn 12 of Massa. Got off the brake pedal and recovered it back to an especially late apex, but critically he did get it back online.
Now Ferrari getting ready, you can see. So prior to the first stop, it was Kimi Raikkonen who stopped first on lap 18, stationary for 8.7 seconds. Massa was stationary a lap later for exactly the same amount of time. So clearly, if Raikkonen had run a little bit longer in this stint, he would have been able to go on and win the race. He goes through to complete another lap. So does Felipe Massa. The Ferrari mechanics are out waiting there, and they're going to have to wait for another lap. So Raikkonen, I don't know whether someone's disobeyed a pit call or if someone's not got the message through, but certainly both Ferraris go through, and rather perplexed Ferrari mechanics sitting there wondering where their cars got to. Kubica down in 10th at the moment, having made his second stop early. And the board there being shown for Raikkonen. Harder tyres then coming out for Kimi Raikkonen. He's 0.8 of a second behind Felipe Massa. This is lap 41, Ted Kravitz.
And it looked like they were playing chicken with each other. The pit crew knew that both of the guys on an identical first stop were going to have to come out. David Lloyd, the operations manager, took over from Nigel Stepney, called out the pit crew, and the engineers just would not show the board. They were playing chicken with each other, seeing who runs out of fuel or gets close to running out of fuel first. And because Kimi Raikkonen pitted first, it's him who's come out again, and a very, very good stop with the harder tyres on now for Kimi.
Well, Raikkonen was lucky there. He stopped a full half-metre short of his mark, so that meant all of the wheel guns were in the wrong position, but they still got him out quickly. But Raikkonen straight out into a lot of traffic as well. He's got to stay inside that white line, which he just does, otherwise he'll get a drive-through penalty. But Raikkonen well short of his marks.
Yeah, little concentration error possibly from Kimi Raikkonen. In comes Nick Heidfeld in 5th place. His second and final stop of the afternoon, goes onto the soft tyre with the white stripe on it. Back out he goes, and fairly lonely race really for Heidfeld. 12 seconds behind Alonso, a comfortable 6, relatively comfortable 6 in front of Kovalainen, whose engineer was telling him earlier on, push, because you can beat Heidfeld here this afternoon. But really the BMW has been improving steadily all through the season. They've always really had it over the Renault throughout the year. They've got more than double their points in the championship race, and Heidfeld looks to have 5th place booked here on board with the race leader, Felipe Massa, pitting a lap later, exactly as he did the first time round. His in-lap has been reasonable, and let's see where he comes out relative to Raikkonen.
Well, if he gets a clean stop, he should just be ahead. He had a few tenths in hand. He'll need a lap's less worth of fuel on board. The rear tyres were turning. That looked quick to me, and that should get the job done. Meanwhile, Raikkonen surely is in all of that traffic somewhere at the back of the picture. And right at the back of the picture he is. Massa's got all that traffic to go through. Where is Raikkonen? Raikkonen coming into turn one now. Massa maintains the lead by quite a margin, in fact.
Well, the mechanics did their part. Imagine being the one that made a small mistake that cost Felipe Massa the lead there. He comes back out in third place because obviously Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso and the two McLarens have not stopped. So Hamilton now leads this race. There's quite a bit of traffic though in front of Felipe Massa, and that could count for something. It could be, oh, he's already got in front of Jenson Button. That's important for him. But remember that Hamilton's also racing Raikkonen, and if he can put a few laps in now, Lewis Hamilton, he might be able to leapfrog Raikkonen. If Raikkonen struggles in this traffic, second place might just be there for the taking for Hamilton.
He was 8.3 seconds behind, so he needs to go an awful long way. We're on board what I suspect is it's Hamilton. Oh no, he's got a damaged right front tyre. Hamilton with a right front puncture, that's going to rip the wing to bits.
Not to mention what it's going to do to his championship lead. Lewis Hamilton sitting looking at a possible second place, but at worst third, is now looking at not scoring any points at all. And if he damages, you say, the front wing, both the Ferraris go through. A wry smile, no doubt, on the lips of Fernando Alonso, his teammate, who has gone through as well. Lewis still has a fair distance to go to get back to the pits here. Well over a mile to go. And he needs to stay out of everybody's way as well. This is really going to... Oh, no, he's back into the pit lane. So not so bad for him.
Oh, he's going to hit the wall if he's not careful. Just kept it out. It'd almost be better putting his foot on the brake and stopping that flapping. That's what he's done now. And Alonso's there at the refuelling rig. He'll clear it just about. This is going to put Hamilton back, 5th or 6th. Ted.
To pit Alonso, they had to pit Alonso because they were worried about a safety car and it was time for him to come in. The mechanics having a look, the front wing end plate's completely destroyed. They can't actually get the front wing under. They've had to put a jack in the middle. The suspension on the right-hand front side looks just about okay, but the aero on that car is shot to pieces.
I'm sure the car is safe as he goes back out. I'm sure they've had a look at the suspension, but certainly they've taken a few bits of the aero off, as you say, Ted, and that's cost Hamilton. We'll find out exactly how many points it's cost him, but it's not done him any favours whatsoever in the title race. Alonso pitted from the lead just before that happened, but didn't really hold Hamilton up at all. He rejoins in 5th place then, according to the computer. Giancarlo Fisichella has also made a pit stop in the Renault. Let's take a look and see if we can see what happened here. That's where it went.
Yeah, it was obviously on its way out down the hill, so he's picked up a puncture from somewhere, and the tyre tread was delaminating straight away there. So Lewis Hamilton, he certainly didn't take risk on tyre, he's gone for the harder tyre, and he was about halfway, he was down in turn 9, so he was about halfway around the lap, and it minimised the amount of pain he had there to an extent.
So a real test of his mettle now. How much can he fight back? Massa leads Raikkonen. Alonso is up into 3rd place now in the McLaren, having been as low as 7th place at the start. And there you can see Nick Heidfeld. He's the target, really, for Lewis Hamilton. Try and claw back an extra point. 14 laps to go here in Istanbul. The closing stages of the Turkish Grand Prix in Istanbul. Felipe Massa is leading Kimi Raikkonen in 2nd place, the 2nd Ferrari. He's 2.5 seconds in front of him. And Fernando Alonso in the McLaren is 18.5 seconds behind him in 3rd place. Heidfeld is 4th for BMW. 5th is Lewis Hamilton, who 15 minutes ago had a very comfortable podium in prospect at 3rd place with an outside chance of leapfrogging Raikkonen for 2nd by running quite long in his middle stint, instead of which he picked up a puncture. All sorts of drama then for him getting back to the pits. He's managed to do it, and he's rejoined in 5th place, so real damage limitation for Hamilton and McLaren. Could have cost him a lot more than that because Kovalainen and Rosberg were not far behind, and so he managed to get out in 5th though. Kovalainen 6th, Rosberg 7th for Williams, and 8th Kubica in the BMW. Certainly the start was pretty dramatic. Massa from pole took the lead. Raikkonen from 3rd place got in front of Hamilton. off the start line. He was on the clean side, Hamilton on the dirty side. It was pretty critical. Alonso, though, lost 2 places to the BMWs, moving from 4th down to 6th spot. But he's recovered very well, Fernando Alonso, and he's been patient and pushed hard when he could. And his reward looks set to be a podium.
It's lap 49. Raikkonen has now slipped 3.4 seconds behind Massa. First and second, the 2 Ferraris. They're 22 seconds ahead of Alonso, who's comfortably in 3rd. Heidfeld 4th, 40 seconds off the lead. Hamilton then 5th. And here then is the car of Hamilton. Struggled to get the right front off for a while. He's just lost some returns and bits and pieces off that front wing end fence. But the barge board's in place. Oh yeah, it's flapping around like crazy. Almost would have been better to pull it off completely. But so several pieces then missing off the front wing, and that also can get lodged underneath the car too. But they're all critical to control the airflow underneath and over the car. And Lewis will have a car that's sliding a lot at the front. He'll have to find a new way to drive it, and at the moment he's doing that.
On board with Trulli, down in 17th place, having a very disappointing afternoon. Makes a lunge down the inside of Barrichello for 16th.
That was lunge with a capital L.
Team radio for Kovalainen.
Come on, we're faster than Hamilton. We're 2/10 a lap faster. We need a bit more, though.
Yeah, needs more than 2/10 of a second a lap. He's running out of laps here. It's going to be the closing stages here. There is Hamilton, there is Kovalainen. It'll be quite interesting to follow Hamilton and see how the car is handling through some of the corners.
Hamilton actually moved 2/10 ahead of him on that lap. 29.1 versus a 1 minute 29.3. So the gap now back up to 2.9. Lewis has got it covered.
Massa's had one of those afternoons. We talked about his conversion rate of poles to victories. He had 4 from 7 before. He's about to make it 5 from 8. And he's looked very, very calm and unflappable at the front. He's making his way up the hill then, turn 9 and 10. Only about a mile and a quarter to go before the finish. And he can almost get out and push it home from here. It's been a tremendous drive for Felipe Massa. Ferrari's 6th victory of this season out of 12 races. It has been literally even Stevens between themselves and the McLaren team. Another masterclass then from Felipe Massa, the Brazilian driver, with Roberto Carlos, the footballer, here as his guest for the weekend. He promised him pole and a win. He has delivered. Felipe Massa takes his 3rd victory of 2007, his 2nd in a row here at Istanbul Park. It really is the lucky venue for Felipe Massa. Raikkonen made that mistake in qualifying yesterday that consigned him back on the grid. There's Massa's father, who is absolutely delighted. Big message to everybody back in Brazil from him. 5th career victory then for Felipe Massa, and they've all come from pole position. There's Alonso, comes through in 3rd.
Tell you what, Heidfeld will be 4th, but Hamilton will have Kovalainen all over his gearbox. Kovalainen has taken 6/10 out of him on this lap. He was 1.6 behind when he started the lap, and Lewis will do it, but the Renault of Kovalainen will be right with him as he goes over the line. So Heidfeld takes 4th then, Hamilton 5th, just ahead of Heikki Kovalainen for 6th. Rosberg will finish 7th, Kubica 8th, Fisichella 9th, Coulthard 10th, Wirtz will be 11th, the last unlapped driver.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Chuck the bits.
The prancing horse flies then once again over Istanbul, just as it did last year. And once again, it's Felipe Massa who's delivered the goods. There he is, looking fresh as a daisy. So Massa, for the 2nd year in a row, wins from pole position. Hamilton has lost ground in the championship, but it could have been so much worse. We have a double header at Monza and Spa, 2 of the best tracks in the world coming up, and we take our 4-way title fight there. Could there be a better prospect?
Well, it was difficult like last year, but you know, it was pretty similar. Started on the pole and having a very competitive race with especially with my teammate, and but it's fantastic. I mean, every victory is a victory.
How do you view the championship?
Yeah, I think so. Even I wanted to win, and I'm disappointed with the second. But we would have done, if I would have done better in qualifying yesterday, it would have been probably a different story. But we still gain points on Hamilton, so we probably gained more than we expected. So it's okay. I think so. It's going in the right direction. Good race for the team. So we try to do it again next race.
Doesn't change too much, you know. I need a much better race if I want to close the gap much more, and you know, I will try Monza again.
Another win from pole position for Felipe Massa, the second Ferrari 1-2 of the season. And Fernando Alonso keeps up his record of being the only driver to score points in every race this season so far. Behind him, Heidfeld a rather distant fourth, and Hamilton doing so well to salvage fifth and hold off the charging Kovalainen. Rosberg and Kubica, the other point scorers, and an honourable mention for Jenson Button, who got to 13th from the back row of that grid. Championship gets more tense. Hamilton's lead over Alonso down to 5 in the battle for the driver's title. Massa moves above Raikkonen, but Massa still 15 points behind Hamilton. But those Italian fans will sense that the big turnaround is possible when we get to Monza in 2 weeks' time. Especially in the Constructors' Championship, where there is a disputed 15 points missing from McLaren's total. That Hungarian Grand Prix score is still the subject of appeal. But without that, Ferrari have closed right up to just 11 behind. Well, right after the race, Louise got quick word with Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, Lewis, what to say? I mean, you were sitting relatively pretty, and then lap 42, bang.
Yeah, it was a little bit unfortunate, but still, we did a good job. The team did a fantastic job all weekend. We had the pace of the Ferraris, I think, but when you're behind them, you lose a bit of downforce, and I think we were just matching them for the majority of the race. But yeah, really unfortunate. All of a sudden, I sort of saw some bits start flying off the tyre, and it blew. And I was quite fortunate I didn't put it in the gravel, so we still got points.
How difficult was it for you to get the car back to the pits in that state?
Well, I couldn't stop the car, so you know, that wheel was locked, and I think the rear wheel was coming up, so it was extremely tricky, especially if you remember some people have that and they break their front wing or break the suspension, so I had to try not going too quick but get back as soon as possible without losing too many places, and you know, I got 5th, so with that problem, I think it's got a good job. Very good, because even with a new set of tyres on, you were still driving a damaged car, weren't you? Yeah, I did think that the front wing would be broken, and I don't know why. I think it was probably too much time to change it. But yeah, it really made a huge difference. So I had a huge understeer, and I couldn't get around the corner, so I couldn't challenge the BMWs.
How much of a problem is this as far as your championship hopes are concerned? A disaster or just a bit of a problem?
No, just a little bit of a problem. You always have setbacks. We won the last race, and we've still got 5 to go, so I'm still leading with 5 points. It's not over, don't worry.
Thanks, Liz.
So in the circumstances, Lewis Hamilton reasonably happy with what he got out of this Turkish Grand Prix. Before our final analysis, we'll give you one more chance at our ITV F1 competition.
We're offering you the chance to attend the famous Goodwood Revival next weekend, where you can experience the golden age of Grand Prix racing and have the chance to mingle with famous faces from motorsport past and present. You'll have 2 Revival tickets for all 3 days, 2 nights hotel accommodation and full VIP hospitality, including paddock access and grandstand viewing. You'll also have a total of £500 to get your period costume. Plus, you'll be given an unforgettable ride around the Goodwood Motor Circuit on Saturday morning in an historic car driven by Sir Stirling Moss. To be in with a chance of winning this great prize, just answer this simple question. What is a trilby? Is it A, a hat, B, a coat, or C, a scarf? The number to call is 0901 293 2020 or text F1 plus your answer A, B or C to 63337. Calls cost £1 per entry from a BT landline. Calls from other networks and mobiles may be higher. Text will cost £1 plus the standard network rate. Entrants must be 18 or over. Cable and satellite viewers can press the red button, and lines close at 6 p.m. this Tuesday.
Yes, it's a tight Tuesday deadline for that competition. If you aren't our winner, there are still tickets available for that Goodwood Revival meeting next weekend. So good luck, and I suppose, Mark Blundell, luck played a big part in the outcome of this Turkish Grand Prix, especially as far as Lewis Hamilton was concerned. It could have been a whole lot worse with that tyre blow.
It could have been very bad for Lewis Hamilton's championship charge, and yes, a little bit of luck came into play, and I think Lewis also made and braved some of his own luck in terms of getting the car back to the pits, because the right front tyre blew. Whether it was a puncture or a delamination, we'll have to wait and see. But of course, that is the overworked tyre around this anti-clockwise circuit. There's a lot of load going through there, and you can just see stripping away there the carcass. Lucky thing for Lewis is he reduced his speed. He doesn't actually get too much damage done to the front wing, although it inevitably did do some damage to the car and the aerodynamics were spoiled.
It's time for a very cool head in the cockpit moments like that, both bringing the car in and also nursing it round to the end of the race, because he was under pressure from Kovalainen.
He was under pressure, and he actually got on top of the car and got on top of the handling problems it had, drove around them and still managed to get his lap time to be a very competitive one and kept in front of Kovalainen. Yeah, cool head as normal.
But Ferrari's dominance, well, it came right from the start, and it really was pretty well no contest at the start, wasn't it?
No contest whatsoever, because the two Ferraris flew off the line with the clean side of the circuit. Lewis Hamilton had to slot into third place. The big loser in all of that actually was Fernando Alonso. He got dropped back, nearly lost his car during the turn one itself, had to correct it. But just watch Lewis here. He notices the two Ferraris going by. He must be definitely frustrated with that. Slots himself into third, but he knows there's a long race ahead of him, and that's the kind of thing you have to do in these races. Truly here is a guy who gets knocked out from behind. His race is definitely spoiled, and a great shame for him.
Fernando Alonso also had a big moment in that first corner. He was very fortunate to finish on the podium today.
He was indeed, and I think that was definitely a plus point for him to get on that podium, and he's closed the gap down to Lewis Hamilton. That's what he turned up here for, and he's put the pressure on him.
Felipe Massa, though, enjoyed the celebrations, and such an impressive performance from the Brazilian once again.
You know, Felipe Massa gets on pole position, he leads away, and there's no stopping the guy. There's a little bit of a frustration sometimes when he's coming through the pack, but when he's in this kind of mood, there's no getting by him and there's no stopping him. Kimi Räikkönen tried, but whatever he did, he couldn't get near him.
And a quick word as well about Jenson Button, starting from the back of the grid and finishing 13th. Magnificent.
You know, I think Jenson had a great race today, I really do, and he was one of the only guys overtaking other cars on the circuit. Just watch him slide by David Coulthard, slips it up the inside on the curbing, handles it well, composes his car, blocks David out, another move. And his pace in the race was pretty strong. They've just got to get on top of that car during qualifying.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. Well, that's the Turkish Grand Prix. In terms of spectacle, I suppose it could have been a great deal better. Ferrari's dominance was absolutely total today. But in terms of Lewis Hamilton's championship position, it could have been a whole lot worse. He still takes a 5-point championship lead to that Italian Grand Prix at Monza in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.